So if you've been around my channel for a minute, you may remember a few months ago when I upcycled a mirror. At the beginning of that video, I said that I had gotten a couple of items from my friend's place that I could take with me in my little goblin trash pile. One of those items was this wonderful lamp. And as much as I love how bright it makes this dark corner of the room, I don't necessarily love how it looks. It's just kind of generic silver lamp color. I think it could be better. And that's why today I'm gonna try to transform this pretty basic lamp into something a little more fantasy coded, a little more whimsical. Dare I say, fairy core? So I've had a couple of ideas on how this could look eventually, but the main thing holding me back is I want to change the shape of this lamp just a little bit, but I don't know if it's possible given how it's built. So to see if any of my ideas are going to hold up, I think the first step of this project, before we even solidify a design, is to do a little investigative destruction. Okay, I've unearthed this from the corner and we're going to see what happens. I apologize, the lighting is really bad. Is that better? My hope is that inside of this lamp, there's actually 3 different wires that I can pull out so that these arms I can make a little longer. Is that gonna happen? I don't know. Do this at your own risk. I'm not an electrician. Make choices that you feel are safe. It doesn't really offer a whole lot of options, if I'm being honest. The more I'm looking at this, the more I think that trying to change where these guys are is gonna be tricky. I think what that means is I need to figure out a design that can work with the placement of where these guys are, because there's not that much slack on the wires that I have in here. There seems to be no way to break this apart without using like so much power tool and strength. Yeah, that's not coming apart. Short of me completely scrapping this lamp for parts, which seems like kind of silly because the whole point is like it's already in lamp shape. I'm gonna try to find a design that works where I keep all of these in the places they're already in and we work with just the adjustability of the heads. I think it'll be fine. I'm gonna put this back together and then we're gonna start cooking up some sort of design. So I found some reference images that I really liked elements of. The first was this tree that had a twisted trunk and its roots were all growing over this rock, and the second was this faux flower. I thought that with these 2 pieces we could kind of smash them together to make something very fantasy coded. With all of this in mind, I drew up a quick design. I took a twisted vine-like stem that had some roots protruding over a rock that would help cover the base of the lamp, and then each of the lights at the top would be hidden by a large flower. And then obviously we cannot have a rock without some moss. So I'll take some of the leftover moss I had from my mirror project and use that to cover up any details that I don't like. With this super detailed design finished, let's start the build. All right, I am primed with a hot glue gun and a dream. I went foraging, found some supplies between Home Depot and my basement. I think I have what I need to make this all work. Honestly, it's gonna be a lot of trial and error on this part. What I'm gonna start with though is I'm gonna be putting the rock part at the base and then I'll build up from there. So making a rock out of foam is a pretty simple process. Basically, you just stack up all of your spare foam as tall as you want it to be, building out enough bulk so that way you get the size of rock you're looking for. Once you're happy with the size, you then take your knife and start cutting away to make the edge of the rock look a little bit less piecey. Do not eat styrofoam, please. After the rock was all done, I started building up the stem shape. I used pipe insulation, which is basically just a skinny pool noodle, and if it was still summer, I probably could have found some at the dollar store, but oh well. I took the insulation, wrapped it around the lamp base, trying to leave some gaps between them that I could fill in later. I made sure to vary the height so that it would have more organic shape to it. After all of that was secured with hot glue, I started filling in those gaps I had left using backer rods, which are just thin foam dowels. It was simply a matter of gluing all of those into place to make sure the base of the lamp was fully covered. Or so I thought. It was at this point I discovered that I could not hot glue foam to foam. Every time I did that, the foam insulation would insulate the heat, funny enough, and keep it from cooling, which led to the foam melting itself, and it made this whole process so much more difficult than it needed to be. I eventually wedged most of the pieces past the large insulation so that it could be attached to the base of the lamp, and then used only small amounts of hot glue to secure the rest into place. Update. I finished all of the foam on it. I have some fears about spray painting this because of how it reacted with all of the glue, and I worry that the spray paint's just gonna eat through all of my foam. So, to help with this problem, and also to kind of hide any of my rough edges, I'm gonna be paper macheing all of the foam. It's probably not a step I wanted to take, but it should give me a nice texture, and it will help later on when I'm doing the paint job, because it means I'll have something to dry brush on. So it's not the worst thing in the world, it's just annoying. Careful. I'm just gonna use Mod Podge water and some shop towels, and I'm gonna cover this whole thing in paper mache. If you've never done paper mache before, it's a pretty simple process, it's just a little bit messy. Basically, you take a glue, in this case Mod Podge, water it down. You probably could use a little less water than I did here. I had to add more glue later on in the process. But then you dip in your paper. In this case, I'm using shop towels, but you can use newspapers, tissue paper, basically anything that'll get wet and form around the object. And then once it's covered in the glue water, you kind of press it all over your object to get all the shapes that are there. And like that, you continue onwards for the entire project. While I was paper macheing, I was reminded of why I don't paper mache very much. It's because it is so incredibly messy and it gets all over your hands in maybe the most unpleasant way possible. I was finding glue on my fingers for at least a day afterwards. The paper mache worked really well, it looks pretty good. It is still wet, however. I let it dry fully overnight. It's like the afternoon the next day, well over 12 hours. It's still like kind of wet in the bottom. So I've put it outside. Hopefully the wind, the sun will help dry it out a little bit faster. Hopefully my neighbors don't think I'm too weird for that, but you know. I eventually got impatient and decided it was dry enough and spray painted the entire stem with this dark green color as a base coat, and then I also hit the bottom of it on the rock part with this dark brown. From there, it was all about adding depth and shadows and highlights. I do this by dry brushing with a variety of colors. For the stem, it was green. You use a really crusty brush and a little bit of paint and basically do the worst paint job of your life. It should be really streaky and patchy, but it also won't go into the crevices as much, meaning you get nice built-in shadows. So I just spent time building up the green coloring using this dark green, a medium green, and then a light green. Once I was finished, look how proud I am of that paint job. For the rock base, it's exactly the same as the green, except this time I work my way up through blacks. I start with the deep black, covering most of the brown spray paint. I then move up to a medium gray, which is just a mix of some white and that black color. And then finally, I move on to a highlight, which is mostly white with just a little bit of black so that it's not too cartoonish. The very final step of this base is adding a little bit of moss to the rock to give it a little bit more character and life. I was pretty careful about how much I used because I didn't want it to overpower anything or hide the rock I just spent all that time painting up. But after a little bit of moss, we finally have our finished base and it is time to work on those petals. I did a terrible job explaining how I made these petals, so voiceover me is gonna save the day. What I tried to explain was that I've been seeing a lot of people on TikTok use paper to make flower lamps, but I was worried about that because paper is really flammable, so I decided that nylons were going to be a slightly safer option. There are a lot of good tutorials out there for making nylon flowers, but the basic idea is you get a piece of wire, stretch the nylon over it, and tie the end off, sometimes with another piece of wire, or in my case, I just used a little bit of thread. Once you've made one, you now need to do this like 20 more times. I did make two different sizes of petal, a big and a small, so that each flower could have a little bit more variation. So, we're gonna try to make these all look not like flesh. because that seems like not the aesthetic at all that we're going for. And I don't want to buy more spray paint. I will if I have to, but hopefully this works. I'm gonna take some paint and some water, and all I'm gonna do is try to like dip dye these. I'm just gonna put some paint into the water, and we're gonna go from there. It's working 0%. That's not true. It's working 1%. No, I was so hopeful. Why won't you work? I don't want to go to the hardware store. So after a quick pity party, I grabbed pink and yellow spray paint and began to color each petal. It was super easy to blend them, and I really got good coverage quickly. So in the end, it was probably for the best that the dye didn't work out, because in no time at all, I had all of my petals perfectly painted. To attach the petals to the light, I cut down the shades that came on it already, spray painted them, and used some electrical tape to try to get everything to stay together. It was a slightly chaotic method that did work 50%. The small petals stayed on perfectly fine, but the next morning when I came downstairs, most of the large petals had fallen off. So I resorted to hot glue and some more tape to reinforce everything while it was drying. Lastly, to cover up all of this mess, I used the remaining part of the shade that I also spray painted green and just slid it over top of it to hide all of my secrets. And with that finally done, I think we are ready for a reveal. Look at how it turned out! I'm so happy with this. Honestly, all things considered, it went a lot better than I thought it could have. It was probably for the best that we didn't mess the electrical or change where any of the wires were coming from, because that could have been a disaster. I'm really happy with how the flower petals turned out. It was probably for the best that I didn't end up using the dye, because the spray paint colors are so vibrant and they blended so well together. It just looks so good. Some things I would do differently next time: I would probably do a second coat of paper mache, despite how much I hated the process. It could be like a little bit sturdier, like I don't know if you can see, but I can squeeze it a fair bit still, and it could be like more sturdy for the longevity of it. But because it's gonna be in the corner and I'm not gonna touch it, it's probably fine. It got a lot bigger than I thought it would, the flowers, so that means I need to reorganize this wall a little bit just to make some space for it so it doesn't crowd my sword that normally goes there. It's a very minor problem, it's a later me problem, but overall, it turned out so good. I'm so happy. If you had a fun time this week, give this video a like or a comment. Both really help the algorithm figure out whether or not this is a good video that it should show to more people. Let me know if you enjoy this type of video, these upcycles. I've done a couple of them now. There's a playlist, it's on my page. If you do, I'll keep making more. If you don't, maybe this is the last one, but you have to let me know for your voice to be heard. I am also on a journey to reach 500 subscribers, and we are still fairly far away, but with each of you, we get there a little bit faster. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.